she's now working at full-time traveling.
Hi, if everyone wants to grab another refill of food before we get started. We have so much cheese. Please eat it. Yeah.
Just before we leave, probably.
Alright. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time on a busy Monday to listen to us talk about postgraduate options for law in America. And so hopefully we can answer a lot of your questions tonight. There will be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session, as well as some great networking. So how tonight will go is that I will give you a brief rundown of Education USA and how we can help you find opportunities to study in America. Then our keynote speaker is Sarah Gonzales from Pepperdine, and I'll tell you a little bit about her in just a few minutes. We also have a really great panel of alumni who are here to share their personal stories with you tonight. So get your questions ready to go and we'll kick off a good session. So first I wanted to tell you a little bit about Education USA. And I've got a little map of America here for you. And can anyone here tell me what these little dots mean? Any ideas? That's a great guess. They're not law schools. Actually, all these little dots represent New Zealand students that are currently studying in America. There are New Zealand students studying in each of the 50 states at the moment, which is fantastic. That means wherever you go in America, you are in good company. So with Education USA, we help people like you. We're a part of the government, so we just help New Zealand students all over the country with finding opportunities for navigating the rigorous application process, finding opportunities for financial aid, and all of that is for free. So feel free to contact us anytime that you have questions. We are soon to be getting someone based in Wellington who will be here full-time to help you with all of your needs, but for now I am located in Auckland and can help you out anytime over the phone or via email or as you need as well. And one of the things that I will talk to you about is the 5 steps to study. So this is something brand new from Education USA that we just released that really simplifies the whole process of getting to America. So starting out with researching your options, there's over 4,700 accredited institutions in America, which is quite a large number. So we help you with defining your priorities and just getting familiar with all the opportunities out there. Step 2 is financing your studies, which is probably the most important part for many of you in this room. Completing your application, then applying for the student visa and preparing for your departure as well. So we have a lot of resources, and actually Fulbright New Zealand will talk later today, but they can help you with basic information here as well. But for now, I'm going to kick it off with Sarah from Pepperdine. And Sarah Gonzales is the Assistant Director of the Straus Institute for Dispute Resolution, which is actually the #1 ranked program according to the U.S. News and World Report. They've had that title for the last 11 years consecutively, which is pretty phenomenal. So it's quite an honor for Sarah to be with us here in New Zealand today, and she's got a big week of travel ahead of her, and we're kicking it off and going to show her what New Zealand's all about today. So get your really smart questions ready to go, and we can see if we can bombard her with all that stuff later on. But I will get your presentation up and running.
Perfect. And I did get a slight introduction. I had my first L&P for lunch today, so. So then just to kind of give you a little bit more of a background, I've actually been with Pepperdine for over 11 years. So what I'm sharing with you when it comes to tips for applying is through many, many applications that I have seen through, gone through, and kind of want to give you some advice on what can help you when it comes to gaining admission for law school. Keep in mind that anything I say is going to be different depending on the context of the application you're looking for, so always check on the requirements of the particular programs that you've done your research on and look at their specific requirements. As a general introduction, when it comes to studying law in the US, there are a ton of different choices because there's actually over 200 law schools in the United States. And so when it comes to choosing a school, you have plenty of options in regards to choosing a big one, a small one, close to certain areas, specialized areas. That's what can make the application process a little bit difficult because you have so many choices. When it comes to law education, there's approximately 141,000 law students in the United States, so there's a fairly good amount, and it's actually split proportionately between male and female students. So you're going to get a wide variety of options when it comes to studying in the US. One of the elements I always recommend international candidates look at is level of accreditation. So in the United States, there are two main levels of accreditation. You have the ABA, which is the national level of accreditation. That's the American Bar Association. And then you have regionally accredited law schools. So that can be, if you look on the map, you'll actually have California accredited schools. You'll have like the Southeast accreditation schools. These are schools that I would refrain looking at simply because it's going to be more difficult for you to be able to sit for a bar exam if that's what you want to do. If you're looking for job prospects in the US, they're going to look for ABA accredited programs. So I would always recommend that international applicants look at ABA accredited programs. There are actually several different ways to find them. There's actually the Law School Admissions Council has a directory that will list the 200 plus ABA accredited schools where you can go through and work through that search. When it comes with the application process, I always recommend that applicants take a step back and think about, well, why are you looking to study in the United States? Is it because you are looking for additional prospects for working in a national firm? Are you looking at working in the United States? Are you looking at developing an area of specialization, being well known in a particular area? Because by taking a step back and thinking about the why, that'll actually help dictate the what. Whether or not it's a JD or an LLM or a specialized program or a more general program will be a better fit for what you're looking at doing. And so are you trying to fill a gap in your career where maybe doing an internship may also help with that? Are you looking at, again, different specializations? So I always recommend that applicants take a moment to think about the why, to figure out what the best fit would then be, because now you have a sense of direction. When it comes to the type of degree options, there are actually 3 law degrees in the United States. So different from New Zealand, the law degree is actually offered at the graduate level. So students will typically go through a bachelor's degree that's a 4-year program, and then they're going into the first level of law in the US is the JD program. So that is typically a 3-year full-time program for international students. So with that, you're doing a general US law education, and different JD programs will have areas of certificates or other specializations where you can delve further in a particular area, but the degree is going to be a JD degree. For a lot of international students coming to the US, they look for the LLM, which is a 1-year advanced law degree. And then the third degree, the highest, is the Doctorate of Law. So you'll see it as SJD, you'll also see it as JSD, so it will come in a couple different acronyms, but essentially that's your Doctorate of Law program. When you're going, again, for the JD degree, that's the first degree for the United States. If you're looking at practicing law in the United States, this is the best option in regards to getting a law job in the US, because it's giving you a level playing field with a lot of the other candidates looking for starting law positions in law firms. The JD degree, again, is going to be a 3-year full-time program, but there are actually a number of other options that are popping up within the market. With the JD degree, you're going to take your general law courses. You're taking criminal law, contracts, real property, torts, wills and trusts, remedies, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to LLM programs, I always describe that as 2 different options. So with LLM programs, that's your 1 year of advanced law studies. There are a number of bar exams that will let you sit for their bar exam with 1 year of advanced law. And so many international students will do an LLM degree either to create an area of specialization or to qualify for a bar exam. And so with the LLM program, you are tending to see either a general program where a law school will open up their curriculum to allow students to take their Juris Doctorate courses normally available for JD students. And so you're going to be a handful of LLM students with a classroom of many JD students going through. So the general programs will give you that flexibility to kind of go through and pick and choose and figure out what areas of specialization you want to do while meeting the requirements to sit for one of the bar exams. So that's one of the options for an LLM, the general LLM. The other option for an LLM program is a specialized degree, where these are typically students that are looking at getting an LLM in environmental law, in taxation, in intellectual property. My particular program is in dispute resolution, so you're taking a sequence of required courses and a sequence of elective courses in a specialized area. So there's a ton of different specializations, and realistically, more and more specializations keep popping up as law schools start getting creative and creating new programs. So when it comes to choosing whether or not you want a general or a specialization, I always turn that back on the applicant to have you think about, well, where are you looking at practicing? What are you looking at doing with that degree? Because the more general LLM is great if you want to have the experience of studying US law, but it depends on where you're looking at marketing yourself and where you're looking at getting a job. So for example, NYU did a study a few years back where they looked at international law firms and asked them, when you're looking at a candidate that is applying for a position, what is helpful for them to have? Because they had questions of whether or not international students sitting for the bar exam was actually important. And only 18% of them actually said, well, it would be nice if they sat for a US bar. But the majority had said that what they're looking for is specialized training. So having a specialized LLM in any one of these different areas is providing a unique skill set within that international law firm. So thinking about, if you're trying to build a career in the United States, that's one option. If you're trying to build a career in an international law firm, having a specialization may actually have increased job prospects depending on what you're looking at doing. And so those are things to think about when it comes to deciding. There are some specialized programs where you're going through the sequence and having an LLM in XYZ that will actually give you the flexibility to use elective courses, to take courses required for the bar, to take random JD courses. So one of the elements to think about when it comes to choosing a school is asking the LLM program if they have the flexibility to be able to take traditional JD courses as well. And so that will give you the most amount of options. So in addition to the LLM curriculum, it may open up where you can then take that random real estate law or other, admiralty in the law, or some other courses that are very specialized that may help you in what you're trying to accomplish. And then lastly, the SJD program is that doctorate of law. And so with an SJD, there are going to be different requirements in the United States. So to qualify for an LLM, you need a first degree of law, either a JD from the US or an international law degree like an LLB here in New Zealand. For an SJD, you're going to see three different options. Either there's an SJD, Doctorate of Law program, that will recognize an international LLM. That's one option, which is kind of the smaller of the options. The second option is schools that will recognize an LLM degree from the United States, but in any of the different law programs. And the third options are, there's some SJD programs that will only accept SJD students that have gone through their LLM program. So if teaching, scholarship, having the doctorate of law is something that's very important to you, I would make sure that you're selecting an LLM program that would match the needs of that SJD. So if you have an SJD in mind and you really want to go to that school, work backwards and figure out, will they take any LLM, or if you have to go to their specific program. And don't be afraid to ask schools if they have an SJD. Like I know for us, we've got a proposal out to create an SJD program because we're a very specialized field, and for us to not have one, this is my argument, it's not helpful when the students are studying in other programs, but they're studying our faculty members. And so ask if there's something in process, or ask if there is an option. Sometimes they do it on a case-by-case basis where, SJD programs can really vary. Sometimes it's only 2, 3, 5 students. Sometimes it's a large group, depending on the school. So when it comes to law degrees in the United States, I always like to mention that there's this trend that I'm seeing of emergence of non-traditional law degrees. So these are degree programs in the United States where they are offering a Master's of Studies in Law, a Master's in Legal Studies. We have one at Pepperdine that's a Master's in Dispute Resolution. I'm pointing this out because some of these non-law degree options will be put out on the website and you'll see information, but if you have a legal background, I'd be careful with some of these because you may not qualify for a bar exam. These are not legal law degrees. So these are actually degree options where someone in human resources, someone in business that wants to be able to better understand contracts or wants to have additional resources that can help them with their non-law profession will go through some of these other legally oriented but non-law degrees. So as an international student, many students don't know the difference between the LLM, SJD, and JD program, so I always point this out so that you're not surprised and you join a Master's of Law program and then realize you can't sit for a bar exam. So I always add this in there so that people are aware of other options. One of the biggest questions I get as I do presentations is how do I decide between what's the right degree for what I'm looking at doing? And a lot of it's deciding between a JD degree and an LLM degree. Again, I put that back on you and thinking about your trajectory and your career path of what you're looking at accomplishing. The JD program is a good option if you are actually looking at working in the United States. So if your primary goal is to get a degree in the US and stay in the US, the JD degree is going to give you more career options. Having an international law degree and going through an LLM program will qualify you for a bar exam. The challenge is, when it comes to marketability and job prospects in the United States, when you have an international law degree and a one-year LLM, and you're competing for a position with someone with a JD degree, a lot of the times someone with that LLM is looked at as overqualified. They don't know what to do with you. Because you have your international law degree and 1 year of law study, they're more likely going to choose someone that has that 3-year law degree. So going through and doing the JD law degree is going to be more helpful if you're looking at actually working in the United States, because then you're actually on a level playing field. You have that same 3-year degree of law and you've passed the bar and you're coming in with the similar qualifications. What I would also encourage you to look at is I'm also seeing emergence of hybrid programs where programs will actually let you do a JD with a LLM, or there'll be an accelerated, like at Pepperdine, we have a 2-year JD program and a 1-year LLM. So we have people that will actually piggyback them, and so they're only at Pepperdine for maybe 3 years. And they're, instead of going through a 3-year JD program, they actually will go through both. There's some law programs in the United States that will give you advanced standing within the JD program, so that may shorten a 3-year JD to a 2-year program. And so I would look at some of these creative options and look at how you can get a specialization with the first degree of law if your goal is to work in the United States. If your goal is to work outside the United States, then having the LLM degree with an area of specialization is going to, of course, make you a lot more marketable because you're bringing a unique skill set within that international law firm. So again, thinking about your career opportunities, that's going to dictate which of these two options would be a better fit for what you're looking at doing. So like I mentioned, there are a number of hybrid options I'm seeing pop up. And so they're LLM to JD transfer programs, LLM and JD joint programs, and then I'm seeing more of these 2-year programs. And so 2-year programs can look like a couple different things. It's either an advanced standing program where they will recognize 1 year of your coursework here, and then you only do 2 years, fall, spring, of coursework in the United States. Or Pepperdine's 2-year program is actually summer, fall, spring, where you're still doing 6 semesters of coursework, but you're taking courses over the summer. So you're going to have a number of different options depending on how you would like to go through that program. When it comes to choosing a school, there's a number of different factors that come into play. For some people, location's important. Maybe they like to be able to have the option to go skiing, and having 4 seasons is something that's very appealing to them. Maybe they have a family that lives in an area. Maybe someone really wants that big city life, living through the subway and going through at a fast pace. Maybe some people want the more relaxed suburb life. So for some people, location's important. Looking at where it's located. I always get questions on safety, being close to Los Angeles, and we're, as you can tell from that photo, we're in Los Angeles, but we're not in Los Angeles. We're kind of across the street from the beach. So location can be a factor. Reputation of school and faculty. In the United States, they have a ranking system that's U.S. News and World Report. It's the big ranking system that a lot of U.S. schools will anchor themselves in. That is certainly one way of doing it, but I would encourage you to look beyond U.S. News rankings. Simply because U.S. News rankings Well, for one thing, if you're interested in an LLM program, the U.S. News only ranks certain specializations. They don't rank LLM programs in the general. So when you're looking at, oh, that school is ranked X, Y, and Z, that's typically for a JD rank. And so for rankings for a JD program is a lot of statistics driven, and so it's not really the best indicator for an LLM experience. The specializations are actually voted by peer faculty within that field, so the faculty are saying which are the best programs. So that one is a helpful indicator, but don't limit yourself to that. Think about the faculty that teach within that program. Do they have an area of specialization in the field that you're looking at teaching in? Do they have networks where they're really involved in the community, or they're involved in that particular area that you can actually delve into as part of becoming a part of that organization and studying under that faculty member that may have connections with X, Y, and Z international organizations? Do they have training conferences or symposiums or other non-academic events where you can tap into when it comes to broadening your network? Do they have other resources that will help in regards to networking within that LLM program? Because realistically, studying in an LLM program in the United States is as good as the effort you put into it. So if you go into an LLM program and you check off the boxes and take those requireds and take those electives and then graduate, your career prospects is not going to be as effective if you actually are very strategic and, okay, what courses are going to help open doors in certain areas if I'm looking at working in this particular field? Is there a clinical or externship program that's part of that law program that I can actually go out and gain some real experience? So we have a mediation clinic class where students will go through and actually mediate real cases. After you take the theoretical courses, we give you a little badge with your photo on it. It says mediator, and we send you to Los Angeles Superior Court. In order to pass the class, you need to mediate 24 cases. And so taking advantage of some of those elements where you're actually gaining real experience can be very beneficial. So looking at, does the school provide access to some of those resources? You know, that mediation clinic is only one of our clinics. We have a securities arbitration clinic, an employment mediation clinic. We have a juvenile justice practicum where we work with jails, LA County jail systems. I mean, there's a number of different options, but you have to ask. And options to participate in some of those will vary school to school. So although they may have some of those clinics available, ask them if LLM students are actually eligible. Certain legal clinics may have limitations when it comes to having someone that's actually a law student. So even if you see it, clinics and externships, ask the LLM administrator and make sure that you have a knowledge of whether or not you can access those courses as a student in the program. But that's one of the benefits of a U.S. education, is that ability to gain that practical experience as a student in the program through those clinical externships. It can really be very helpful because it helps you to, well, for one example, mediating our mediation program, so you can brag and say that you've mediated 24 cases, which is huge in some international countries. Even experienced mediators don't have that experience. So using those opportunities to help you in your network and in what you're looking at doing in marketability can certainly be helpful. As well as looking for any special characteristics that may be important to you. Law school is not easy. So if you are really passionate about skiing, as that example, and having a place that's close to that where you have that opportunity to relieve your stress by going up the mountain and skiing somewhere may be important to you. But also keep in mind that the US is fairly big, and there's usually places that you can find to do whatever you're looking at doing. And then I always recommend that applicants pick a range of schools because this is very important in figuring out what your options are. By looking at and applying to private, to state funded, to a number of different schools, it'll give you more options when it comes to making that decision of where you're looking at going. For a lot of students that are looking for studying in the US, maybe they have finances on their mind. So they think of, you know what, I need to apply to the cheaper state schools because the tuition's lower. Keep in mind that if you're limiting yourself to some of those schools, some of the private schools actually have more scholarship. So you might be able to apply to a more expensive school but get more scholarship, and it ends up cheaper than a state school. So don't close yourself off when it comes to the different options. Realistically, to apply to a school, you're going to pay the application fee, and they're usually run through Law School Admissions Council, so it's not like it's a ton of work. So give yourself some options. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be careful in how they say this. I'm a negotiation program. So I always tell candidates, apply to a variety of schools, because when it comes to getting the admission offers and it comes to getting the admission scholarship offers, that also provides you with a little bit more leverage. So when you're admitted to a series of different schools and you have different scholarship options that are given to you, let's say, for example, you got admission to your dream school, right? But you got admission to this other safety school, but they gave you a little bit more money. Don't be afraid to ask your dream school if they're willing to match that scholarship. Realistically, some schools may be able to match, some schools may not, but you at least know what your options are by asking that question. And I'd always do it in a way that you're showing them, here, I got admission, here's my admission letter from this other school, would you be willing to match? Don't try to barter with schools, that's a little different. Because we don't tend to have patience for that. But if you're showing, here's my other offer, I'm choosing between the two, are you willing to match? Because if they're able to match, great. You got your dream school with a dream scholarship. If they're not able to match, okay, you have a decision to make, and figuring out what your best options are. Because certain programs will have better resources when it comes to networking within the field, and so don't let it be driven truly just by money. So I always recommend get a range of schools. Give yourself some options. When it comes to finding a school, there's a couple different resources available. I always recommend Law School Admissions Council. Realistically, for the JD program application process, all JD admissions are run through Law School Admissions Council. You can't apply to schools directly. It's all run through LSAC. For LLM programs, it's actually kind of half and half. You're going to have some schools that will require applications through LSAC, and you're going to have some schools that will still require a direct application. I like LSAC because LSAC sends me an email once a year and says, oh, it's time to update your profile. So when it comes to finding schools, you know that this directory is actually up to date because we send information to update the information at least once a year. To give you options, I always mention LLM Guide. That's more of chatter, I would say. So if you want to, they have open forums where they'll ask, hey, I got admitted to this school, what should I decide? And it's alumni, people that have gone through programs or other applicants that will talk and kind of do the open forum where they give each other feedback. But realistically, it's not updated as often. And then to give options, Peterson's is one, but realistically, I've tried to update my information there a couple times, and I don't know how up to date that one is, but I like to give people options so they don't feel I'm favoring LSAC. But realistically, there are a number of different ways. LSAC is nice because in the directory, you can actually put in your parameters and say, look, I'm really looking for a school in this area, and I want to study this specialty, and I'm looking for a small, large, medium, or whatever the case may be, and then it'll actually give you a list. So when it comes to finding the school, the directory is super useful, and their directory is limited to ABA accredited schools. So the search is focusing on these ABA schools. ABA guide for law schools, you can actually go to the American Bar Association and find it as well, but it's all on LSAC. So that'll actually save you some work. What to expect in the classroom. So here I understand, depending on the school you go to, I know Victoria has Socratic method. In the United States, most schools will use the Socratic method, where they're fairly large classes, where maybe it's 75 students. Faculty expect the students to have done their reading ahead of time, so you can't show up to class thinking you will prep in the next one or try to wing it, because faculty will actually call on you and make sure you're prepared. And so for many law schools in the United States, it's very, very hands-on. So again, I'm going to preface this that says this differs per program, but most law schools, when you look at LLM programs in the United States, most of the programs have JD curriculum. They open up for law students where they can go through and either get a specialization by picking through the JD curriculum or actually going through and doing a general. But realistically, you're going to be in a classroom with a lot of JD students. So when you're going through and you're competing for a grade, there's that model. There are a couple LLM programs that are cohort model, where it's a series of LLM students that will go through the sequence of courses together. My program is a little bit different. We actually are reversed. We have our own, because we're a specialized program, courses that the JD students have to fight for spots to get into our classes. Our LLM students and our master's students get first priority, and certificate students get first priority. So that's always a little different, and we don't use the Socratic method because we're a hands-based programs. It's lectures, discussions, and a ton of simulated exercises. So you can figure out what your negotiation style is. You know, what happens when you put out the first bid, or if you let the other person do it, or take a more collaborative versus a aggressive approach, and do a lot of those hands-on components. So again, that's going to differ program to program. What I like about studying in the US is professors are actually very approachable and accessible. We have an open door policy. So professors, at least in our school, are all on the 3rd floor, and if you wandered through, you'll actually find a lot of open doors where you can stop and have conversations with people. A lot of our faculty will actually host like sessions in their home. For us, for our students, we actually have a barbecue that our director holds at his house. We have 2 directors. One will hold a barbecue at his house in the fall and one in the spring. But faculty tend to be very approachable. It's not surprising that you'll be walking down the hallway and a faculty member will go, "Oh, hey, how was that exam this morning? Because you had mentioned that the last time we had talked." So it's a very nice environment. And this is where choosing a school with good faculty can become important, because it's not just your experience while you're studying at the law school. Maybe you go back and you work for an international firm and you run into that bankruptcy case where that bankruptcy faculty then become a great resource when you can actually lean back on them and gas their opinion on certain things. This will vary program to program and realistically faculty to faculty, so maybe it might take a week to get a response. But you know, again, that will vary depending on the faculty. What may also be surprising, depending on that program you go through, you may have a grade that's based primarily on your final exam. And so think about those components when it comes to studying in the United States. Those that have written final exams, it may be solely based on that. Again, we don't have final exams, so I can't say that works for our program. We actually are research paper driven. So for each class you take, you're writing a 15 to 20 page research paper, because we want to see how you're applying the theory versus an exam. When it comes to what to do next, so you've gone through an LLM program and maybe you're looking at sitting for a bar exam. There are actually over 35 states in the United States that will recognize an international law degree and will let you sit for a bar exam. Now, the 35 states will have different requirements when it comes to sitting for that bar exam. I can tell you most international students will sit for the New York or will sit for the California bar. You can actually look up a lot of the bar requirements on ncbex.org, so that will actually give you the list of which bar exams will let you sit for, will recognize an international degree and let you sit, and what the requirements are. When it comes to some of the requirements, what a lot of the bar exams will look for is they'll look at your education. So for example, if you know that you want to sit for a bar exam, I always recommend that applicants during the application stage, when you're applying for an LLM program, you can actually submit your credentials to the New York bar and get it pre-approved. So they will actually go through and say, okay, you know, this degree is equivalent to a JD degree, and we will let you sit as long as you meet the other conditions. Because knowing that going into an LLM program will be very helpful. Because if you went through some other program that they don't find it equivalent, doesn't matter what you do in the United States, unless it's a JD degree, you will have issues sitting for a bar exam if they don't find that your law degree was equivalent to a degree in the US. And so you want to know that ahead of time, because that helps you when it comes to structuring that LLM coursework to sit for a bar. So I always recommend that applicants kind of get started on that. When it comes to the bar exam, they will differ. In the United States, we're different. We don't have a national bar exam. We have a bar exam for each state. So going back to this other side, so the 35 states that will let you sit for the bar, if you go to school in California, you can actually take which of the 35 that you want to take to be able to do it. But once you pass the bar, that's where you're kind of going to practice law. So that's why a lot of people will either take New York or California, because they tend to practice in those areas. There's a lot of international law firms that are based out of New York, that having that will certainly help them when it comes to representing their international law firm, and they might find themselves in that region. But where you go to school is not necessarily going to dictate which bar exam you sit for. Realistically, you're doing a 1-year LLM program, you're still going to have to do a bar prep course to prepare you to actually sit for the bar. And so you could study in a variety in any one of these states and be able to qualify. It just depends on what you're looking at doing it. So for example, when it comes to the New York bar, the New York bar has actually recently changed the requirements for international students. So if you're going through and you're looking at the New York bar, one thing you have to look at for an LLM program specifically is asking them if their courses are pre-approved for the New York bar. So as an institution, I have to send them a list of our courses with descriptions, and they will actually pre-approve certain courses to qualify for that bar exam. So you want to make sure that LLM program has courses that have been pre-approved for the New York. California, for the other example, it's California, so they're not going to be as straight. It's more of, take courses that are offered subject areas for the bar, but they don't pre-approve. So check to see if those programs will allow you to take courses that qualify for the bar. So like I mentioned, with the different LLM programs, general or specialized, general, you shouldn't have problems. You should be able to take courses. It should be able to fit within your curriculum to be able to take courses to qualify for the bar. Specialized, you want to be careful. There's some specialized LLM programs that give you here the required courses, and you get that specialization, but don't offer you elective courses to be able to take courses required for the bar. And there are other specialized programs that let you do both. So for us, we actually have enough elective courses that we will let students take to qualify for a bar exam in addition to getting the specialization. So ask the LLM administrator and see if the courses will give you that flexibility to take the courses required for the bar. Some of the bar exams will actually have additional elements. So MPRE is kind of primarily for a California bar exam, where it's a separate mini half-day exam. It's a moral professional responsibility exam. And then many of the other bar exams will have character and fitness components where they want to make sure that your character is of good quality. One of the big changes is when it comes to the New York bar, in addition to taking courses required for the bar exam, you are actually required to go through a pro bono requirement. And so finding an LLM program that has that clinical or externship option where it's kind of built in and you can get that pro bono work as you're going through that LLM program can help you in regards to reducing the amount of time that you're spending on the qualifications for a bar exam. If you look at the fine print at the pro bono is actually required by the time you're sworn in. So even after you complete an LLM program, you could also go do the pro bono somewhere else. You just want to make sure you factor that into your timeline when it comes to sitting for the bar and all those different requirements. When it comes to the application process, there are a number of different components that are required. I always recommend that applicants apply early. Realistically, when you think of the application process in the United States, you're going to have some LLM programs that are January, February application deadlines. You're going to have some LLM programs that are March, April application deadlines. And then you're going to have a number of them that are May, June, July. I don't know how the people in July do it, because usually we have confirmed in deposits and we're getting ready with orientation by that point. But check with the schools you're applying for. All the law schools will have a fall entry date. Now, fall in the United States is either a mid-August, September kind of range, and that will differ program to program. I am seeing more LLM programs have a mid-year point where they will actually accept students for the spring semester, so that may be a January term. And then for us, we actually go year-round. So we have a fall entry, which is mid-August, a January, which is spring, and then we start students at the end of May. So I would think about when you're looking at starting an LLM program and actually work backwards from there and figuring out all the different application components. Of course, I would always recommend that applicants start for the next year around that December, January time period so that you don't miss out on the people that have that early application time period in January. Realistically, there's only a handful that have a January application deadlines and the rest kind of trickle on throughout the spring. But give yourself options. You don't want to miss that deadline and then not have the opportunity to apply to that school because you didn't get everything in on time. There are some different application components that take time as you go through the admissions process. And so with the application process, LSAT exam is a question I always get. Do I need to take the LSAT if I'm looking at applying to a law program in the United States? If you're applying for the Juris Doctorate, JD program, first degree of law, yes, there's no way around it. You have to take the LSAT. And realistically, your scholarship is based on GPA and LSAT in many cases, so you want to take that LSAT. So although you may try to want to negotiate out of it, it's not really negotiable. When it comes to LLM programs, no, do not take the LSAT. Save your money, save your time. LSATs are not required for LLM or SJD programs, only for the first degree of law. Letters of recommendation are also required, transcripts, essays, and other different components. Each school, read the directions on the application. You're going to have some schools that will have directed essays where they want you to specifically respond to this paragraph. You're going to have other programs that say, tell us generally about why you're looking at studying in our program and what you're looking at doing. So make sure you read through the directions for the program that you're looking at applying for. One of the biggest questions I get questions on is this personal statement. What do I do with a personal statement? What am I supposed to be writing about? I always tell applicants to look at personal statements as another way for us to get a sense of why you're interested in our particular programs. So in an application, I'm going to get your transcripts. Your transcripts will tell me what degree you earned, in what topic areas. Usually you're giving a course-by-course description, the course-by-course list of what you've taken. So I'm going to actually be able to see all the different classes that you've taken within your LLB in law. I'm also going to get a copy of your CV or resume. So I'm also going to see what you've been doing professionally, your internships, your work experience, et cetera, your clubs, your hobbies, whatever the case may be. And so I already have information on what you've been doing academically and what you've been doing professionally within the field. I always recommend that applicants use the personal statement to connect the dots between everything. This is your opportunity to tell me your story. So for you to talk about how you took that, I'm going to make this up, your environmental law class that really provided some excitement and interest within that field, which led to your internship with this environmental law firm, which then really cemented, you know what, this is what I want my career to be, which is why you're applying for this environmental law program. You want to use the personal statement as an opportunity to connect the dots between everything else we're seeing in your application. So what I'm looking for is I want to understand your motivations. Why are you interested in this particular field? I want to understand why are you interested in my particular program? I want to understand what are your career aspirations? What do you want to do once you leave the program and you want to do X, Y, and Z? Because I want to know, why should I invest in you? Why do I need to give you access to our particular programs and what you're looking at doing? And you don't have to have everything spelt out specifically of, I want to work for this firm and this and that. You don't have to get that minute. But giving us a sense of your direction and that you have a focus is certainly very helpful. And so I always recommend that applicants take the time to tweak that personal statement so it seems it's very specific for the institution you're applying for. With that being said, I also doubly recommend that you double check your work, because I will still get personal statements that will say, and I will be a great fit for XYZ University, and it's not Pepperdine. So it does make my decision a little easier, but it's not the decision you want. So make sure that if you're taking the time to tweak it, take the time to double check your work and make sure that you're sending the right statement to the right school. For you going through and taking the time to spell it out for me, it makes it easier for me to actually see how it could be a good fit, how you could be a good fit for my institution. So I always recommend that applicants tweak it. You could tell the same story. We're not going to see what you send to all the other schools, but tweak it, find some courses that you find are really interested that you really want to take. Oh, throw it in there. Oh, you saw some faculty that are specialized in that area, throw them in there too. So try to just tweak it in a way where you're really spelling out how it's a good fit for what you're looking at doing in your career trajectory. With that being said, what I would recommend that you not do, I still get personal statements where someone is trying to prove that they are academically qualified for our programs, and so they throw in a lot of legalese, some supras, ids, footnotes. Please, your personal statement is a personal statement for a reason. It's tell us your story, tell us your motivations, tell us what's going on. It's not, let me show you how good of an academic writer I am. Realistically, throw in a writing sample. I've gotten books from people of, trying to prove that they are academically capable of going through the program. Give them a writing sample for that, because if you are having too much legalese in that personal statement, you just lost that opportunity to tell us your story. Tell us the why. Tell us how you're a good fit for our institution. So please make sure that you avoid some of that legal jargon. There's a time and place for that, but personal statements, not quite. Polish proofread, make sure that you tweak it so that it shows your areas of interest. Application examinations. Here in New Zealand, I would not worry about the TOEFL or IELTS because you guys speak English. And if they are requiring it, you should go back and try to negotiate that. because realistically many schools will have a waiver process. And then LSAT, again, not required for the LLM program. You're going to require that for the JD program, unless you have some hybrid program. So we have a hybrid LLM to JD transfer program where you can then transfer into the JD program and not take the LSAT. So always check and see if there's what options are available at that particular institution. Letters of recommendation. Who should I choose? There's no perfect recipe on what to submit for letters of recommendation, because realistically it depends on your story. So if you are a recent graduate coming out of an LLB program, your story is going to be different than someone who's been practicing for 5 to 6 years. It's going to be different from someone that's been practicing 20, 25 years. So think about what you're trying to communicate to the admissions committee. A lot of people don't realize this, but letters of recommendation is another avenue to tell us your story, but through someone else's eyes. So when you're looking at letters of recommendation, most schools will require 2 or 3 letters of recommendation. Some will be very specific. I want one academic that took a course in a specialized area. I want one professional that you've worked with for 3 to 5 years. So again, read the instructions on the application. I always recommend that applicants be very strategic in how they use these letters of recommendation. So find people that can give us a sense of your academic capabilities. So if you're applying to a specialized LLM program, and you've took that environmental law class as part of your LLB, get that faculty member to write a letter of recommendation. Well, and hopefully you did well in that class as well, because it will give us a sense of what you are like in the classroom, how interactive you were within that environment. If you did well, great. But having that specialized faculty member that can talk about your interest in that particular area gives us another layer to that story, in the sense that, oh, this person really is interested in our specialized program because they took X, Y, and Z. I would look at professional recommendations of people that you've worked with. It could be internships, that could be your supervisors within your current employment. It could be previous clients that can talk about how great of a problem solver you were. I'm again going off my dispute resolution, so to see how great you were in resolving a situation can be super helpful. I always also like to see, and what people don't think about, is people that are working within a particular field. So if your end goal is, I'm going to just mention this because that's what I see, is arbitration or mediation. Having a letter of recommendation from someone that's working in an arbitration or mediation is super helpful, because they can talk about your potential in the field. But not only does it mean that you've had an opportunity to network with someone that's in that where you want to be 5-10 years from now, it shows me that you actually know what you're getting into, that you've taken the time to meet with someone that can talk about your potential within the field. So letters of recommendation can be great tools for you to be able to say you're applying to a particular program, you'd love to do what they have been doing, and kind of work your way into networking within that field. So again, be very strategic in how you use letters of recommendation. I always also tell you to be careful about who you're choosing. Some people will focus on getting that dean. They want the person with the highest title. Think about the content. Be very specific about the content that's being shared with the university. Because yes, you can get a letter of recommendation from that dean, but if that dean's going to tell me, yes, this student was a student in the program, okay, what am I going to learn from that? Versus if you got that associate dean that also happened to supervise your thesis, they're going to tell me a whole lot more than that dean with the high title has. So be strategic. Don't just focus on the titles, but focus on the content. Think about what they're going to say, and think about what story they're going to tell us that adds to your well-rounded application. When it comes to the application process, I mentioned this earlier, Law School Admissions Council will be your Bible per se. So if you're applying for JD programs, there's this first tab here that's future JD students. That's going to be your first one-stop shop. So it has the directory, it has the application process, but for LLM students applying for LLM programs, you're going to go to tab number 2. I want to be careful in saying this, that these two systems are offered as part of Law School Admissions Council, but they are not the same. So be careful on what you're submitting to, because LSAC, if you accidentally submit materials to the JD Credential Assembly Service and you're applying through their system, they won't necessarily share it with the LLM program. They will want you to resubmit materials and pay their new fees for the LLM service. So it's not the same system. So you want to be careful in what you're applying to. With that being said, you want to try to be friendly to the administrators that are there, because I can also call LSAC and say, oh man, I got an applicant that actually submitted materials to the JD program. Can you give me access? depending on who I talk to, sometimes I can't. So don't be afraid to talk to the administrators that you're applying for and see. I don't know if everybody else is as friendly as me, but I know I've been able to get a couple instances where I've been able to get access to things that they would have wanted you to pay a different service for. So again, good resource that's their website for you to go through, and then JD or LLM programs. This is they have a specific site for those that are looking at applying for law school for the JD program. So if you're an international candidate that wants to apply for a JD, they have a specific resource just for that. This is one element that could delay an application. And so this is one of the elements I always recommend that people start with. Law schools in the United States for international candidates will have two different processes. They will either accept transcripts directly. So that means they've got someone in-house that will actually go through and evaluate the transcripts and actually that will communicate to the admissions committee what your degrees are comparable to the United States. And they will actually look at, okay, this is a real school that is ranked so high, or what versus a diploma mill or some of the international schools where you kind of do some weird online program and you get a law degree. So the evaluation process is very important. This process will typically take 2 to 3 weeks for you to go through. So I always recommend that applicants start with this, simply because that's what's going to take the longest. And then while it's being evaluated, you can then work through all the different other components so that by the time it's done with the evaluation, you're ready with your personal statement, you can upload everything and be ready to go. I would check with the schools that you're applying for. This is also one of the components that will differ program to program to program. Some schools will again take transcripts directly. Some programs will say we want you to only use Law School Admissions Council as the evaluation service. Some law schools will make exceptions and let you submit it to any of the evaluation agencies or be specific to NACIS approved, which is a accreditation approved evaluation program. So make sure you're asking the right question. To be able to figure out what their requirements are and what you can submit for. What's nice is through LSAC, it's just an extra box you're going to have to check to be able to use the evaluation service, and you pay $125 US for the evaluation, but you're going to have to submit your transcripts to them anyway. What's nice about LSAC is you send one set of materials to LSAC, and let's say, for example, you're applying to 10 different schools, they will then shoot it out to the 10 different schools. So it saves you the hassle of actually sending 10 sets of materials to different places. So again, evaluation agencies, check with the school and what their requirements are, and if they'll accept any evaluation, if it's required, and what the requirements are for that. Sources of funding. I always describe this in two different ways. There's either internal sources of funding, so that's what the university will provide as part of your admission, or they may have a separate application requirement for specialized endowments or scholarship programs that are available, and external scholarships. These are ones provided by other third party. For Fulbright is an example of that, where they provide scholarships for you to study within another institution, but those are coming external to your admission. So when it comes to internal, this is just what Pepperdine offers as an example. For the JD program, it's based on GPA and LSAT. There's a number of different options. We actually have a couple full tuition scholarships offered through our dispute resolution programs, and then partial scholarships are considered at the point of admission. This is, again, where you look at the school that you're applying for, and you look at what the requirements are for that particular program. Ask if there's a special scholarship letter that's required. It doesn't hurt to submit an extra statement that just highlights why you should be considered for scholarship and why it's important for you or help you study within that particular program. But check with the school that you're applying for regarding what their requirements are. When it comes to external scholarships, as I travel the world, I collect all these different scholarships that I hear of. So there are a number of different organizations that will provide scholarships. It can be a general funded, like Fulbright, or the Rotary provides scholarship as well through district grants. It could be specialized. So if you're looking at applying for a specialized area, look and see if there's scholarships available within that region. So there's a number of different, there's a PEO Peace and Women's Scholarship that provides scholarships for those looking at studying. I'm going to only know conflict ones because that's kind of what I do. There's going to have that, or the JAMS organization, which is a big dispute resolution organization in the U.S., will provide $15,000 for students to study. So don't be afraid to pair up whatever you get as an internal scholarship from the university with whatever you can get from other external scholarship companies. I actually build a website. This is free to anyone. You're not in any way obligated to apply to Pepperdine, but I always use this as a community service to let people know of other people willing to pay for your education. So you're always welcome to go to the website. And again, this is as I travel the world, I always just find new scholarships and pop them on there as a way to kind of help people find other people to pay for your education. Just to give you a background knowledge, at Pepperdine we're located in Malibu, California. We actually have a number of different degree options. The JD program, just to give you background, Pepperdine has the law school as well as 5 other graduate schools and undergraduate. So when it comes to joint degree options, it's nice because you can get a public policy or an MBA or some of these other options with your degree. There's also a number of specialized programs out there. What we're very well known for is our dispute resolution program, so negotiation, mediation, arbitration. We have a certificate master's, LLM, a number of different concentrations within the LLM. The general will give you the most flexibility to take courses required for the bar and whatever random real estate classes or courses you want. All of our LLM students have access to everything offered in the JD program. So you can actually get advisor approval to take traditional JD courses. And then the other ones that we have a reputation for is mediation, arbitration, international commercial arbitration, litigation, or for those that really wanted to take that trial prep and practice and the evidence and all these trial courses that didn't have that experience in their law school. And then our newer one is the business law and arbitration, which is international commercial law and arbitration. And then realistically, most students don't declare, and they take the more general track to get that flexibility. We are also very well known within our particular field. As Katie had mentioned in the introduction, we've been the #1 ranked program for over 11 years, which is fairly nice. And so, again, when I mention don't just base the decision on rankings, I mean don't just base the decision on rankings. And I feel like I can say that because we're ranked versus someone who's not ranked. Don't base your decision on rankings means something completely different. Because realistically, it's about finding the bigger picture. It's about finding what school is going to give you the best resources for what you're looking at doing. Because again, that LLM program is as good as the energy you put into it. So if you're going through that LLM program and you're checking a bunch of boxes and going through requirements, that's one thing. But if you're going through that LLM program and you're purposeful in regards to how you're going through, how you're networking within the program, how you're connecting with the faculty, how you're connecting to other students, can certainly be a unique environment. So in my particular program, we actually have international attorneys. We have attorneys that have been practicing for 20, 25 years in the United States that are mediators in practice, that are attorneys that are making that retirement stage and they want to be able to transition into dispute resolution. So we have a mixed environment. So when you're studying mediation, you're not just studying the stages of a mediation and what happens and learning from the faculty member. You're actually learning from the attorneys that are going through from the US, the attorneys that are going through from international locations. You're learning from the HR professionals, people in business, non-law areas, because we have a master's in dispute resolution. And you're actually seeing how it affects a variety of different areas. So looking at some of those other components may be helpful when it comes to choosing a program. I leave it up to you. I mean, realistically, this is actually Jack Coe, who's I always like to put up that picture because it shows the approachability of faculty members, because the fact that he's sitting at the front of the classroom, sitting on a desk, talking to students, talks about like the fact that he's not behind a lectern just lecturing, is something that shows how approachable the faculty members are. He's very well known in the international commercial field, so he's actually been working on the restatement project, which has been a huge thing. But we're located in California. This is actually Pacific Coast Highway, which runs along the university. These are the celebrity homes in Malibu, so you will run into people. My challenge is I'm not hip into pop culture to know the people I run into. But some people like that. Someone was telling me a story as they went to a restaurant and they said, oh, we really want to go, we want to see a celebrity. And they were like, oh, well, Sean Penn's right there. And I've seen him. He's actually fairly, how would I say, height challenged. So a lot of the celebrities are not as they appear to be on TV. But it's interesting. It's a good environment. It's Los Angeles, which is very dynamic when it comes to dispute resolution. But it's not a good fit for everybody. So it's trying to figure out what is your fit. What do you want to learn? What do you want to get out of the program? And what would help you get to your career trajectory? And then I also have my contact details in here. And I'm happy to talk to anyone interested in any different areas. It doesn't, I mean, I'm a friendly person, I'd like to think. So even if you say I really have a specialized interest in XYZ, let me know. I know a lot of LLM administrators, and if I can help make contacts and connections, I am happy to do that. And I also use Skype a lot. So for a lot of, especially with international students, you feel free. Just make sure you say, hey, I met you in New Zealand, because there are also random people on Skype, so I tend not to accept those. So if you tell me where you met me, then I'm happy to connect with you and help you figure out what you want to do.
Awesome. Well, we'll save questions for Sarah until the very end. So next up we have Shauna from Fulbright, who is going to give us a super quick overview of all things Fulbright, but just a quick round for Sarah.
A lot of information to go through.
Yeah. All right, take it away, Shauna.
Yeah, so I will try and be super quick. Unlike these guys, I actually work in this office in Wellington, so you can come by anytime, call to stop by the office during business hours. I'm happy to talk to anyone about Fulbright or to help you get in touch with these guys, because I work with this one in particular quite a bit. So I work here at Fulbright. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's heard of Fulbright. Raise your hand if you've heard of Fulbright. So Fulbright's essentially one of the most prestigious exchange programs in the world. We operate in over 150 countries, and it's exchange programs with Americans and people in other countries. So obviously we're Fulbright New Zealand, so we're between America and New Zealand. One of the things, the main thing I do here is I look after our graduate student program. So every year we send New Zealand graduate students over to the United States. This year we're sending 30 people. It's the biggest group we've ever sent at once. And that is for all sorts of different areas of study. So it's anything from doing a one-year research project that might be going towards your PhD in New Zealand to doing a full PhD in the United States, and also LLMs, which is a huge chunk of the applications we get every year. It's probably about 10% of the applications we get, but we can't give too many awards. So that's why this sort of thing is really great, to give everyone an idea of some other ways to try and find some funding. So basically, with that grad student program, we've got a number of types of awards. For most LLM students, you're going to fall into the general category. Our application cycles run, essentially it's an annual cycle. So they close every year on August 1st. We evaluate all the applications, do interviews in September, and then you'll know by October if you're going to be offered a Fulbright. Now, if you remember what Sarah was saying about the application cycles in the United States, they do run all year, but in most cases they're going to be around January or so for the next year's intake. So we like to go through our application cycle here before you get to that point of applying in the United States. So you can go to that school and again have that little bit of leverage, say, hey, I've been offered a Fulbright. And in a lot of cases that can help get a little bit more funding. So most of our students, we have the 1st of August deadline coming up for this year. That's going to be for people interested in starting study in Northern Hemisphere fall of next year, 2016. So we do things quite a bit in advance, so keep that in mind. Generally speaking, for LLM students, the Fulbright Award can be up to $25,000 US dollars cash, and we just give it to you as a lump sum that you can use towards your tuition and living expenses over in the States, with all sorts of opportunities with Fulbrights to do orientation programs. We do one here for all the cohort of Kiwis that are about to go over, and then there are other programs in the States that you can do with other Fulbrighters from around the world. So it's really an organization that once you're in it, you're kind of in it for life, and people are, like to carry that badge throughout their careers as well. And we do have lots of alumni who have done law degrees and brought them back. And so I'm going to get right to them because they're going to have the most interesting things to tell you all. But again, I've got a little bit of information here about the Graduate Student Awards. I've got my business card. Like I said, I'm here in the office. Any other questions about Fulbright, please just give me a call or come in and see me. So with that, I'll introduce each of our celebrity panelists. So you ladies just want to turn your chairs around and come up here. So I'll introduce each of them just real briefly and then turn it over one at a time to kind of give their story about their experience of what they've done. They've all studied law in the U.S. in different capacities. So we'll start out with Joanna Mossop, who's currently a senior lecturer at Victoria at the law school. She got a Fulbright Graduate Student Award in 2000 to do a LLM, I believe, at Columbia. And I'll let her take it away from there.
Sure. Well, I won't keep us too long because I know we're running a bit late. But and it does, when Shauna said you're in it for life, it really does feel a bit like that, because it's been 15 years almost since I first went over on a graduate award. Back then, in the dark ages, there was actually an award, Fulbright award, sponsored by Buddle Finlay, and I was lucky enough to get that, which was a little bit more lucrative than the usual Fulbrights. But so I went to Columbia. I went through the process of trying to decide where to go, and I was lucky enough to be offered a number of options, and I chose Columbia because they offered me a what's called an associateship, which meant that I spent half my time teaching legal and research, legal writing and research to first year JD students, and the rest of my time studying for my master's. And I did a mixture of coursework and thesis, so I was able to do something slightly different by doing it that way. And I had to admit that 2 years in New York was definitely an advantage, say over a year in New Haven or a year in somewhere else. It felt like a really great opportunity. But I can certainly give people advice as to what to think about when you're choosing schools. Since I came back, I've been working at Victoria University, and I've continued my association with Fulbright, and I've been on a selection panel 1 year, so I've seen what the selection panel does, and that's given me a really good perspective. And more recently, for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been the Fulbright advisor, one of the Fulbright advisors for the Victoria University faculty. So I'm a big fan of the Fulbright program, and encourage you to think about that. One thing I would say that we didn't mention is that for lawyers in particular, the Fulbright comes with a big catch, which is that if you get a Fulbright, you can't work in the US permanently unless you first come back to New Zealand and work for 2 years here. It's part of the immigration requirements, so you can't get out of it. So if you really want to work in a New York law firm for the rest of your career, you may want to think about not taking or applying for the Fulbright. I had a friend who went with me on the same year on a Fulbright, and she did intellectual property. She had the opportunity to apply for New York firms, but they didn't want to take her because she only had 9 months that she could do work experience. So she ended up going back to Australia and then to London, and she still hasn't come back to New Zealand, which means that America is closed off to her as a destination. So that's something you really should think about.
That's a very good point. U.S. immigration is tough to deal with. I think we all know that. Thank you, Joanna. So next we've got Lucilla Van Dam, who did a Fulbright sponsored LLM at the University of Michigan in 2007. And since that has come back to New Zealand to has done some work in public law as well as at a large commercial firm. So more detail.
Thank you. The point that hit home the most was about finding the right fit. And for me, looking at the universities, I was interested, of course, in the ranking, not just the ranking, but starting with ranking and then thinking about what kind of experience I wanted. And what I really wanted was a holistic experience. I wanted to be in a small town. I wanted the real college experience. So I looked at all the law schools that were based in small towns that had small programs, and I ended up applying to those and chose the University of Michigan, which is in Ann Arbor. It's a town of 100,000 people. The college life revolves around football, so I got really into that, going to all the football games for the whole season, learning the chants. And the law school was small as well. It was 1,000 law students and 20 LLM students. And the advantage of that is that you got to know a lot of people. You got to know the professors, who really were very approachable, very friendly. I had the best year of my life. It was amazing, and learned a lot. I did a clinical program like you were talking about, where I represented an inmate who had been convicted of a crime, and I ran his appeal. So I went over with an interest in criminal procedure and public law, and it was really amazing. I wrote a few things. So think about what kind of experience you want. For me, it really was a holistic one. I didn't just want an academic experience. I really wanted to be part of the community and be in a small community. I didn't want to live in a big city. I wanted a small town. And when you have your parameters, it makes it easier, because you can eliminate a lot of places really quickly. So I was looking for a small experience. I wanted really to be able to access the professors and to be able to know a lot of the students. And I'm really pleased with the choice that I made. I was also on a Fulbright, so I also had the 2-year home residency requirement. But what I did do is after my master's degree, I took on an internship in San Francisco at the American Civil Liberties Union. So you have those opportunities in the 9 months after your degree finishes to do something related to your program. And so that's what I did with my time. I went to San Francisco for 3 months and did an internship. And then I went back to Ann Arbor and was a research fellow for my favourite professor there. So there are opportunities. You do have to come back for 2 years, but before you do, you can take that opportunity to do something else, which I did. And then I came back in 2007. I went in 2006, came back in 2007, and built up a public law profile. But I've been out of the loop for 4 years because I've had children, but I'll be getting back into it. But it was an amazing, life-changing experience, both professionally, academically, and personally. And yeah, it was the best year of my life, so I really recommend it to all of you if you're considering it. Give it a go, it really is wonderful.
And just to briefly mention, when it comes to finding that right fit, don't be afraid to contact the schools and schedule a visit. Many schools will let you come visit the campus and sit in on a class if you ask. And so try, if you are going to be in the U.S. for vacation or find some other way, don't be afraid to try to do your own mini tour and sit in on classes.
Good point. Okay, so far, kind of the opposite point of view, we have Haley over here, she's an American Fulbrighter who's currently in Wellington doing a research project with Victoria Law, I believe?
School government.
School government. So she's got a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Colorado, but also a JD from Northwestern School of Law at Lewis and Clark College. And I'll just let you have the floor.
Great, thanks, Shauna. So yeah, I have what I would consider the very traditional American route to law. So I did my 4 years of undergrad with a couple different majors, and then took a year off and moved to Mexico. And then waited tables, which is also a traditional year out kind of thing to do. And then went to law school. Lewis and Clark is in Portland, Oregon, which is lovely. It was, so I got my JD. I know almost no Americans who get an LLM. I'm not sure how many even know what it is. But perfect things to get it for these specializations. So the 2 friends I know that have them have it in tax law, because that's not taught as a JD subject. But so if you have any questions about how the JD process works, that's one thing that I think I would keep in mind with an LLM program, is that all of your American colleagues will have significant education behind them. They'll have already done 3 years. They might have already passed the bar exam, which you briefly touched on having to take a bar course. That's not a joke. It's the worst experience of my life. It's 8 weeks of nonstop study. It was far more difficult than the 3 years of law school, and just as expensive. So there's a lot that your American colleagues would have gone through before they got into an LLM. So I imagine you have actually quite a few international students as well alongside of you. I don't know if that was your experience.
We didn't have any American students, they were all international, but we were in class with all the JD students, because I did a general program, so every class I did there was a couple of LLM students or just me, and then all JD students, but it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, so you'd have some overlap.
So I'm sure Haley has also some really interesting, or all of you, but yours is mostly recent, interesting input on like the differences between the way law is studied and practiced in both countries. But we want to turn over to questions in the last little time we have. So I'm going to let Katie take back over. But also remember, we'll have some time after the official question period for everyone to just kind of, casually mingle, have some more food, and come up and ask individual questions if you want to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, the floor is now yours. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, or Shauna will bring her back up here because she will answer some Fulbright questions, and also for Sarah Gonzales from Pepperdine. Any questions in the house?
One thing, can I just, oh, sorry, you've got a question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just had a question just in terms of US universities that have maybe joint LLM programs with universities overseas. So, for instance, maybe Columbia, I think, has an international law program with Amsterdam University that's just set up. What sort of implications might that have for funding opportunities and the bar exam, etc.?
Sure, I would be very careful. Realistically, LLM programs in the US are one-year programs. You do a semester abroad, you're gone for half an LLM. So that can be very challenging because realistically, the bar requirements are very specific. So if you're sitting for the New York bar, those courses to qualify for the New York bar exam have to be taken from the US school in the United States. And they have limitations on how much you're only allowed 8 units over a summer. They don't want you to take a lot of summer courses, so you want to be careful with some of those. There are a lot of joint degree programs. So with us, we have a program we've partnered with a German university. So if you speak German, you can do a semester worth of coursework and then come and do the rest of the coursework at Pepperdine. But that requires you to speak German. So there are certain limitations on what some of those joint degree options are. I would also look at other exchange options. So we have 10, 12-day study tours where you actually will travel to London, Geneva, and Paris and actually meet with dispute resolution organizations in those countries. So if your purpose is to network within certain regions, look for some of those alternative programs. There are a lot of summer programs as well with US law programs. So if you're looking at, a lot of them tend to be overviews on US law before starting an LLM or legal research and writing type of things, look at some of these alternative programs in addition to the exchanges. I would just be very careful with semester abroads. In the JD program, that's great. You have 3 years to go through your JD education, so a semester abroad isn't a big deal. With LLM programs, since you're only there for a year, semester abroad is a good chunk of that LLM degree. So I would look for some of the short-term programs or short-term exchanges, unless it's a dual degrees. There's a lot of LLM programs out there that will let you earn 2 LLMs, where you go through the coursework at their home school as well as coursework at another school and you walk away with 2 degrees. So.
Good question. Any other questions in the house?
A little bit. I know we talked quite a lot about LLM versus JDs. Is it more uncommon, I guess I should say, for international students to do a full JD? Do you not see that very often?
You do, depending on the program. We have a number of international students that will do it, but because you're talking about 3 years of education versus 1 year of education, realistically, a lot of international students will do the 1 year LLM. It's the one quicker route that will let you qualify for the bar. The challenge is, depending on what school you went to, you will then get frustrated when you can't find that law job in the U.S. So I always recommend the 3-year program simply because you are creating a better foundation. But realistically, depends on how much time you have and how many resources. Because realistically, it's more expensive because you're talking about 3 years of education versus 1. Or even if it's a 2-year accelerated program, that's still double the expense of going through an LLM program. But they do offer more scholarships, so it depends on the program.
And not every state will allow you to practice with an LLM as well. So that's not across the board. You can't just, I don't know which states they are because there's too many.
There's 35 states that will let you.
Yeah,
but
so there's another 15 that won't.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to practice in those states. And yeah, regardless, that's just permitting you to sit for the bar, which is like an experience. But the LLM or JD students internationally, I didn't know a single international JD student, and I would put that to how expensive it is. Law school is not cheap, and 3 years of it is worse. So.
I'll just add something about the nature of the program. Both Sarah and Lucilla have made comments about how friendly and approachable the faculty are. That's more likely to be the case in a smaller program in a smaller school. I went to Columbia, and it's a massive school with hundreds of JD students and hundreds of over 100 LLM students. And my experience was, while the faculty are interested, they just don't have the capacity to engage on a personal level with every student. So if you want that personal interactive experience, then that's a reason to look for a smaller program in a smaller school. So I just thought I'd add that in there. It's not every university where you're going to get professors asking you how your exam was this morning. No offense, Sarah.
No, but that's totally true. There's some LLM programs that are huge,
Yeah.
And their numbers.
That was my experience,
Yeah.
for sure.
And definitely mine.
I think it's really important, like a lot of stuff that we pointed out about how important it is to really think about what you want to get out of it and to look for those schools that's going to give you that. I just personally, from my experience with the Fulbrighters that come through, because we do get a lot of law people, so many of them are really only interested in the big name schools. They're great schools, but they don't always take the time to think about what Lucille talked about and what the experience is that you want to have overall. So, you may not have maybe heard of University of Michigan's law department, you may have heard of Harvard, but you might be having a better overall experience at a smaller school like that. So I think those are really key things that people tend to not think about in the first instance.
Good call. Do we have any other questions from the group? Yes, in the back.
Haley, you mentioned that it's an expensive experience to study law. Can you give us a sense of what the actual cost of?
Sure. So I'm happy to share what I had to spend. So for 3 years of law school, Lewis and Clark is probably considered a mid-range price point for law school, and it's $42,000 a year. That's just tuition, so not including room and board. And most law schools have a requirement that no first-year JD students work. Because it's too much. You will fail out of law school if you also have a job. And that's an awful lot of money you've just thrown away as well. So it tends to be somewhere around $200,000 and that's often what American law students are taking on in debt. So that's what we're talking about with financial aid. Financial aid is just a loan. It's not usually assistance. So yeah, like what Sarah was talking about researching scholarship options is something I should have done more of. Because there are plenty.
I have a question in regards to that, actually. One of the things that most people ask me about is working while you're a student as well. So maybe Sarah can hone in on this, and some of you in terms of workload as well. What do you think about working part-time as a student?
Well, and realistically, the government will limit how much you can work. So as an international student coming in, you're limited to working 20 hours. And so realistically, it would be helpful to work, but you can only think of that as extra money, spending money for the movies or something. So I wouldn't be dependent on working on campus. Because the other limitation is has to be on campus. You're not allowed to work on a student visa outside of the campus. And so it can certainly enhance your experiences, but realistically, if you're coming for an LLM program, you're going to be in the United States for 1 year, and you want to get as much of that 1 year experiences as you can, and you don't want to be distracted with having to go to the library to work your shift at the circulation desk. And so I would be very careful about choosing to work part-time. It can certainly add to the experience, but could also limit you in the experience. Another thing that I didn't mention earlier is for a lot of law programs in the United States, they will allow you to apply for what's called OPT. So that will, it's an option to extend your visa for 1 year as you work for a law firm after post your LLM program. So that's one other thing when choosing a school is, do they have options for OPT? Because if your goal of working is to gain some experience and networking in the field, that's a better option than trying to do something part-time and distracting from your legal education.
Can I also add to that, given that I work in a New Zealand law faculty, you should expect that the workload is going to be much higher than you could get away with at a New Zealand law faculty. I get very frustrated actually because people are split. You've got the job and then they've got law school, and for most people, you're doing both. It's just not possible. I had first year JD students who were telling me that they were staying up till 2 a.m. to get their reading done a lot of the time. There's such a lot of reading that's given, and it's expected that you do it. And trust me, you don't want to be asked a question if you haven't. We're very nice here, but many of the professors in some of the schools will not put up with people who will not be happy with students who haven't done their reading. So it is a very different level of workload that you would be expected. So no time to work.
And I did have time, but I didn't want to spend it working. Like I wanted to go to football, and I joined a soccer team, and I wanted as I say, the holistic experience. So I wouldn't recommend working, even if you are efficient in your studies. You want that time to really enjoy the 1 year, 1 year experience.
Yeah.
Good information. All right, any other questions from the group? All right, well, thank you so much for attending tonight. I would like to remind you that we have a lot of food in the back of the room, and you're welcome to stick around for a while, ask us any questions one-on-one that you may have. We also have lots of information up by the door here, so if you haven't already grabbed some pamphlets, please do so on your way out, and let us know if you have more questions afterwards. Thanks again.